Hello, Namaskar, Sat Shri Akal, my friends. Welcome to your beloved channel, The Rider. I hope y'all are doing good. In this video, I will be comparing the FZ25 against the MT15. Now, you people might be intrigued to ask, why am I comparing a quarter liter 250cc bike against a 155cc bike? There are a few reasons. Firstly, they are made by the same manufacturer, that is Yamaha. Secondly, they are both street naked bikes, and the third point is they are priced similarly. That means Yamaha values both these bikes similarly. As of on 10th of August, the MT15 costs you about 1,63,400 on road in Kolkata, and FZ25 costs you about 1,65,800 in Kolkata. So the difference between the price of these two bikes is only 2,400 rupees. Please note that everything I say in this video is based on my personal opinion. I'm not taken seriously by my friends and my family, so you don't have to take me seriously either. I'm only responsible for the things that I say in this video, not for any misinterpretations. In my opinion, neither of these bikes is better than the other. They were made to cater to the demands of different consumer bases. I won't bore you by reading out what's written on the brochure of these two bikes. I will only mention the relevant part of the technical specifications and leave out the part that people generally don't care about. So please stick around.
मगर तू यहाँ से कभी जाना नहीं है
As you will be able to understand motorcycle engineering to a certain extent, and also the R&D's perspective behind making these two bikes. It will also help you understand which motorcycle fulfills your needs and the criteria that you are looking for in a motorcycle. But before I begin, I would like to tell you about the three different types of engines. Now, I'm well aware that there are different types of engine setups, that is DOHC, dual overhead camshaft, and SOHC, that is single overhead camshaft setups, and also the number of valves per cylinder may vary, but I'm talking about the three different types of engines, that is the over square, square, and under square type engines. The over square type engines are the ones in which the bore of the engine, that is the diameter of the cylinder, is more than the stroke of the engine, that is the length of the cylinder. The square type engines are the ones in which the bore is equal to the stroke, that is the diameter of the cylinder is equal to the length of the cylinder. And the under square engines are the types of engines in which the length of the cylinder, that is the stroke, is more than the diameter of the cylinder, that is the bore. I hope I was able to make this point very clear. Now let's proceed with the comparison of the two motorcycles. Now, before I get down to the comparison part of the video, I would like to tell you that this comparison is going to consist of three parts. The first part is going to consist of the technical specifications. The second part is going to comprise of the real world implication of these technical specifications. In the third part, I would like to rate these two motorcycles on a scale of 10 on different parameters. And in the end, I would also like to address the criticism that FZ25 gets from a lot of people. I would also like to tell you people how vague and unfounded these criticisms are. Please note that this is India's first YouTube channel that introduces the concept of rating motorcycles on different parameters. The FZ25 has a 249cc engine, whereas the MT15 has a 155cc engine. The FZ25 produces a power of 20.8 PS at 8,000 RPM, whereas the MT15 produces 18.5 PS at 10,000 RPM. The FZ25 produces a max torque of 20.1 Newton meter at 6,000 RPM, whereas the MT15 produces a max torque of 13.9 Newton meter at 8,500 RPM. As you can see, the FZ25 produces a max power at 8,000 RPM and max torque at 6,000 RPM, which means that you won't have to twist the throttle a lot on FZ25. You won't have to rev the engine a lot on FZ25 to churn out the max power from the powertrain, whereas on MT15 the max power comes at 10,000 RPM and max torque comes at 8,500 RPM, which means that you will have to twist the throttle a lot more than you have to on FZ25 to churn out the max power from the powertrain. The bore on FZ25 is 74 mm and the stroke is 58 mm, which means that the FZ25's engine will be classified as a over square type engine, whereas the MT15's engine has a bore of 58 mm and a stroke of 58.7 mm, which means that the MT15's engine will be classified as a square type engine. The compression ratio of FZ25 is 9.8:1, whereas the compression ratio of MT15 is 11.6:1. The fuel tank of FZ25 is 14 liters, whereas the fuel tank of MT15 is 10 liters. The curb weight of FZ25 is 153 kg, whereas the curb weight of MT15 is 15 kilograms lesser at 138 kilograms. The ground clearance of FZ25 is 160 mm and the ground clearance of MT15 is 170 mm. The wheelbase of FZ25 is 1360 mm, whereas the wheelbase of MT15 is 1335 mm. The ground clearance of FZ25 is 10 mm lesser than MT15 and the wheelbase of FZ25 is 25 mm more than MT15, which basically means that the MT15 can negotiate the city bumpers and potholes better than FZ25 can, but FZ25 can cruise on the highways better than MT15 can because of lengthier wheelbase, which means that it has a lengthier swing arm, which means that it is more stable on the highways. It can negotiate the air drag on highways better. It can stay stable on highways better than MT15. The seat height of FZ25 is 1075 mm, whereas the seat height of MT15 is 1070 mm. The FZ25 gets a diamond type chassis, whereas the MT15 gets a delta box chassis. I hope from these specifications you can make out that the MT15 is made to cater to the demands of a younger consumer base, whereas the FZ25 is made to cater to the demands of a much more mature consumer base. Now the kilometers per liter on the BS6 variants of these two motorcycles is surprisingly good. These were merely numbers on paper. Let's find out the real world implications or how these numbers translate to in the real world. They don't call the FZ25 a daily commuter with a highway soul without any reason, and the reason is the FZ25 has power readily available at very low revs, which means that you won't have to twist the throttle a lot, you won't have to change gears a lot in dailies stop and go commuting rides of the city. Compared to this, on MT15 you will have to change gears a lot, you will have to twist the throttle a lot, which basically means that you will be a little more fatigued compared to your condition on FZ25. Personally, I don't like the seating posture of the stock FZ25, but this can be compensated by adding handlebar raiser on the FZ25. The MT15's stock seating posture is a little better suited to my needs because I prefer a more upright seating posture, and the MT15 has much more upright seating posture than on the FZ25. Even though the FZ25 is quite underpowered on paper, the real world performance of the FZ25 is surprisingly good. The 0 to 100 figure of the FZ25 is only 8.58 seconds. It is probably the quickest single cylinder sub-quarter liter motorcycle when it comes to reaching 100 kilometers per hour from a standstill. On the other hand, it takes 12.08 seconds for MT15 to achieve the same. They say in the world of motorcycling, a difference of 0.5 seconds is huge. Here we are talking about 3.5 seconds, which is massive, mammoth to say the least. Not only does the FZ25 accelerate quicker, it also has a better top speed. The company claimed top speed of FZ25 is 134 kilometers per hour, whereas the top speed of MT15 is 130 kilometers per hour claimed by the company itself. So FZ25 not only accelerates quicker, it also has a better top speed, which means that MT15 won't even be able to take advantage of slipstreaming, because slipstreaming starts working above 80 kilometers per hour, and by the time MT15 reaches 80 kilometers per hour, the FZ25 will be long gone out of its reach. Even though the FZ25 has an over-square engine, it actually sounds like a long-stroke engine because the compression ratio has been kept low. The MT15 has its own advantages. It gets the delta box chassis, which basically means that the MT15 is a better handler compared to the FZ25. It is very precise, it is very nimble. You can zip-zap through traffic very easily. It is a very precise and accurate motorcycle, so you can enter and exit the corners a lot faster than you can on the FZ25. It's not that the FZ25 is a bad handler, it's just that the MT15 is too good of a handler. It is more precise and it is more accurate compared to the FZ25. The MT15 can enter and exit the corners a lot quicker than the FZ25 can. The low compression ratio and long stroke type sound of the engine of the FZ25 gives it a more refined feel to it, which leaves you with a wider grin on your face on highways and city streets. And even though the higher compression ratio of the MT15 gives it a more frantic feel to it, you will be able to have an equally wide grin on your face when you're riding it in the city streets and you're able to outmaneuver, outperform your fellow riders. Now, if you want to call me a delusional narcissist, then go ahead, be my guest, because I have created a device called the Anumeter, which rates motorcycles on different parameters. But here's the catch: this device does not have any physical form, it is only there in my head. In order to keep the rating of the motorcycles fair, we'll keep in mind two factors. First is the price of the motorcycle, second, the time at which the analysis will be made. Please note that no two motorcycles will be compared against each other if they are more than rupees 10,000 apart in terms of pricing. So let's begin the comparison of the two motorcycles on a scale of 10 on different parameters. The first parameter on which the two motorcycles will be compared is styling and design. This parameter rates a motorcycle on its cosmetic appearance. At the front, MT15 gets an absolutely stunning futuristic robot-style visor, whereas the midsection of the bike is rugged, slim and compact, which complements the street fighter character of the bike. But looking at the rear section of the bike, I could not help but think that there is work left to be done. The MT15 gets a rating of 8.5 out of 10. The FZ25 on the other hand does not look dated either. It itself is a futuristic looking motorcycle, but in a different way to MT15. The FZ25 gets a butch and muscular design with a finely chiseled fuel tank. The side air panels are not only functional but also enhance the appearance. The stubby exhaust and the rear tail light complement the appearance of the bike, and from rear the bike looks stunning. But the front visor of the BS6 variant doesn't look quite aerodynamic. I could be wrong about this point and the engineers may have worked a way around it, but even then the BS6 variant's visor doesn't look as good as the BS4 variant's visor. In fact, it looks like a downgrade on the BS4 variant's visor, something that did not leave me with a long face. It doesn't go well with the overall look of the bike. The FZ25 gets a rating of 9 out of 10. It could have been 9.5 had it taken the visor from the BS4 variant. The second parameter on which the two motorcycles will be compared is comfort. Please note that I'm only talking about the stock condition of the two motorcycles. In this department, MT15 fares better because of its more upright seating posture. The MT15 gets an 8.5 out of 10, whereas the FZ25, because of its more forward inclined, committed and focused seating posture, leaves you with a painful wrist and spine, and that is why FZ25 gets a 7 out of 10. The third point on which the two motorcycles will be pitted against each other is handling. I guess everyone has figured out by now that Yamaha prefers precision and handling over power and brute force. In terms of handling, the MT15 gets a lot of advantage from its lightweight frame and delta box chassis. You can enter and exit corners with a lot of confidence, better lean angles and accuracy. It's one of the best handling sub 500cc single cylinder motorcycles in the market, and hence the MT15 gets a rating of 9.5 out of 10. And even though the FZ25 is very lightweight for a 250cc motorcycle, it tends to carry its weight, especially while making U-turns or short turns. It ain't a bad handler, but doesn't fall into the elite category of handlers either. The FZ25 gets a rating of 7.5 out of 10. The fourth point of comparison between the two motorcycles is acceleration. In this department, the MT15 falls way behind, a point that I already made previously in this video, and I'm reiterating my point that even a difference of 0.5 seconds is huge, and it takes MT15 3.5 seconds more than FZ25 to reach 100 kilometers per hour from a standstill. The MT15 gets a rating of 6.5 out of 10. Keeping in mind the price of the motorcycles, the FZ25 gets a rating of 10 out of 10 because even though the numbers on paper are underwhelming for FZ25, its real world performance is deceptively quick. The fifth point of comparison between the two motorcycles is top speed, and in this regard the MT15 reaches a company claimed top speed of 130 kilometers per hour and gets a rating of 7 out of 10, whereas the FZ25 achieves a company claimed top speed of 134 kilometers per hour and hence gets a rating of 8 out of 10. Please note that I'm not talking about top speeds shown on speedometer because there is error and inconsistency in the speedometer, and also the top speed varies in different situations depending upon climatic conditions, if it's going downhill or taking advantage of slipstreaming. Also note that there are other motorcycles available at lower price points that can achieve higher top speeds. The sixth point of comparison is endurance. Which of these motorcycles can be ridden at triple digit speeds over long distances? Even though the MT15 has a very capable engine and can be ridden for a very long time, it will require more halts compared to the FZ25 despite having a better heat dissipation technology. The FZ25's bigger engine and lower compression ratio gives it an advantage. The MT15 in this department gets a rating of 9 out of 10, whereas the FZ25 gets a rating of 9.5 out of 10. The seventh parameter is engine refinement, and in this department as well the MT15 scores lower because of the frantic nature of the engine and its high compression ratio. The MT15 gets a rating of 8 out of 10, whereas the FZ25 gets a rating of 9 out of 10 because of a low compression ratio and long stroke type sound. The eighth point of comparison is the exhaust note, and on that note the MT15 again scores lower because of a hoarse and rasping exhaust note, as a result of which it gets a rating of 7 out of 10, whereas the FZ25 has a deep, bassy, throaty and gruffy exhaust note and gets a rating of 9 out of 10. The ninth point is technology used, and here the MT15 scores significantly higher because it gets a liquid cooling system, an external radiator, a sixth gear, a delta box chassis which is akin to the perimeter frame which helps a motorcycle handle better, and also the VVA, that is variation valve actuation technology, as a result of which the MT15 scores 9.5 out of 10, whereas the FZ25 gets the most commonly used diamond type chassis and an oil cooling system. The FZ25 scores at 6 out of 10. The 10th and the last point is which of these two motorcycles provide a better overall ride quality and a feel-good factor. Which of these two is a more complete and versatile motorcycle that fulfills a more wide array of purposes. The MT15 scores an 8.5, whereas the FZ25 here scores a 9 out of 10. So the overall score of MT15 is 82 out of 100, whereas the overall score of FZ25 is 84 out of 100. Please do not let this comparison video cloud your judgment. They are both high quality motorcycles and you cannot go wrong with either of these two motorcycles. Now let's address the criticisms that the FZ25 gets from a lot of people. Let's hear what these criticisms are. The FZ25 does not have a large external radiator, it does not have a liquid cooling system, and it does not have a sixth gear. Please understand that the engineers in the R&D give a motorcycle what it needs, not what the consumers want, because the consumers could end up demanding something completely absurd like a cabin and an air conditioner on a motorcycle. The engineers in the R&D have got about a century's data, expertise and experience. They are the ones who are making these motorcycles, not the ones criticizing. That is why they cancel thousands of things on these motorcycles and then finalize on something. Before I explain things in a technical manner, let's see which other motorcycles don't have a large external radiator, a liquid cooling system and a sixth gear. The first name that comes to mind is the Royal Enfield Classic 350. The second name that comes to mind is the Royal Enfield Classic 500. The third name that comes to mind is the Honda Highness CV350. And the fourth name that comes to mind is the Benelli Imperiale 400. And the last name in the list is Pulsar 220. The common thing in all these motorcycles is that all of them have got a compression ratio below 10:1. The reason why all of these motorcycles don't have a more sophisticated heat dissipation technology is because they have a compression ratio below 10:1. The motorcycles that have got a compression ratio above 10:1, only they have got all these heat dissipation technologies because they need them. These engines produce a lot of heat, whereas the engines that have got compression ratio below 10:1, they don't produce a lot of heat. Low compression ratio means that the moving parts inside the engine are moving slow, which means that there is less friction and wear and tear. If you rub the palm of your hands against each other slowly, it produces less heat. The faster you rub them against each other, the more heat it produces, and the same principle applies inside the engine as well. As for the number of gears, let me tell you guys that there is a legendary muscle car known as the Plymouth Barracuda and Hemicuda that is able to produce max power from the powertrain within 3 gears. It's a very false notion that more gears equates to more speed. All engines do not require more gears. Some can extract all power in less gears. If you found this video informative, then don't forget to leave a comment below, and if you have any disagreements on the comparison of the two motorcycles, then do let me know in the comment section. Thank you for your precious time. Hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye, adios, फिर मिलेंगे.